Okay, hey everybody. My name's Hunter Pinkston, and I'm here to give my digital storytelling presentation. So, who is Chris Crofton? That is going to be the story that I'm going to talk about today. This image will also come back to use later in the story. It seems a little graphic, I know, but it has some purpose later on. So, first off, Chris Crofton. He is a comedian from somewhere in the Northeast. He moved to Nashville in the early 90s and did a lot of comedy shows there. He sang in a metal band there and was just kind of an all about town fellow in Nashville. He ended up moving out to LA a couple years ago and wanted to further his music career. And, he's still doing comedy, but he wanted to get more into music. So, Chris, he's out in LA now and he put out a record last year and it's really great. So, away from Chris for a second. I also play in a band, and here's a photo of us playing at the Georgia Theater. Chris, he sometimes has a band, sometimes it's just him. So that's a pretty stellar part of the story. There's another photo of our band playing. And so Arrowhawk Records is a record label in town. It is actually owned by my girlfriend, and it's a pretty cool label. She's put out a lot of stuff, a lot of really awesome bands who have gone on to bigger labels, people who have stayed with her and done really well, just all around super cool, and a huge thing in Athens. So, back to Chris Crofton. He put out his first self-titled, or not self-titled, but his first record under Chris Crofton called Hello, It's Me last year on Arrowhawk, which is the same label I was just talking about. And he toured a bit on it, did some record release shows, but nothing really. He never came down south. It was mostly LA, New York, Nashville, stuff like that. And he wanted to come play in Athens since that's where the label is from. And so the label wanted to also have an anniversary party for their 6-year anniversary. So, perfect opportunity, right? So, Chris flew to town, and here he is at my job signing the wall of all the people who have been pressed at my job, and that will give here I can give you a little bit of backstory. So Chris's record was also pressed at my job, which is the record pressing plant in town, Kindercore Vinyl. And since all these factors kind of coincide with me and Chris, my girlfriend put out his record, I pressed his record at my job. I've met him in passing a few times. I'd never met him in person, just via Instagram, on the phone, nothing too personal, but we had started becoming friends on Instagram. And when I heard he was coming to town, I heard he was playing by himself. So I figured, why not just have my band play as his backing band? So I called him up and we talked about it, and he was super into it. So we did that. We decided on that, rather. And he came to town, flew in, flight delayed, you know how all that goes. Gets to town at 9 o'clock the night before the show. We had our first rehearsal. Everybody knew all the songs. It was beautiful. We had a great time. And this is from that night. We rehearsed at my job, and Chris signed the wall, and we were all super pumped. So, without telling Chris, we made these t-shirts because Alyssa, who owns Arrowhawk, had made a flyer that says the same thing because it's a reference to this old shirt that Keith Richards wore that says, "Who is Mick Jagger?" So we figured if we were going to be his backing band, we could do the same thing. So we made all these shirts the day of the show and didn't tell Chris. And the next day, anniversary party at Flicker Bar downtown. We played with Chris. Everybody wore overshirts until showtime. So Chris had no idea that the shirts were going to be there until we all got on stage and took off our overshirts. And he looked around and looked to the crowd and said, "Oh my God, the shirts," and just couldn't believe it. It was super, super cool. And at the end of the show, this picture is missing our drummer Jack because he skipped out a little early. But Chris was just so baffled. We had a beautiful time. The next night, my band, which is called the Pinkstones, played at Flicker Bar again for Athfest. And Chris missed his flight, stayed in town to see us play our own songs the next night. And he ended up sleeping over at our house again after our own show. And the next day, we went out and had coffee, and we're talking about doing shows in LA and New York and all this stuff. So it was just this really awesome experience. And now me and him are great friends, and it was just super fun. And I always love getting to play other people's songs, and I know all of my other bandmates do too. So it's just super stellar, and yeah, that's the story of how the Pinkstones played with Chris Crofton. Thank you so much.